All right, pull up a wooden stool and imagine the smell of salt and old rope, because this is a tale from a time when people trusted the sea. The way we now trust alarm clocks and, both mind you, often betrayed them. 1,000 years ago, in a small coastal village where the houses were stitched together with mud, timber, and stubborn hope, there lived a fisherman named Aerin. He was not famous, not rich, and certainly not written about in any grand chronicle. He owned a narrow boat with a curved prow, patched more times than anyone could count, and nets that carried the weight of many seasons. His hands were rough as driftwood, his back bent like a bow that had been pulled too many times, and his eyes had learned the long language of the horizon. Aerin rose before dawn every day, long before the village roosters found their courage. He would touch the small carved charm hanging by his door, an old habit passed down from fathers to sons, and step outside where the world was still quiet and honest. His wife would still be asleep, the fire reduced to embers, and the air cool enough to remind him that the sea was never truly friendly, only familiar. That morning, like many others, he pushed his boat into the water while the sky was still undecided between night and day. The sea lay calm, almost too calm, like a man smiling without blinking. Aerin knew that look. He had learned, over decades, that the sea had moods, and calm could be one of its cleverest tricks. He rowed out beyond the rocks where younger men were afraid to go. They called him stubborn. He called it knowing where the fish remembered to swim. As the sun rose, he cast his nets, whispering the same words he had always whispered, not prayers exactly, more like an old agreement between himself and the water. He waited, listening to the creak of wood, the splash of distant birds, and the slow breath of the tide. By midday, the wind shifted. It was subtle, the kind of change only someone married to the sea would notice. The air grew heavier, the waves lost their rhythm, and the horizon blurred as if the world itself had begun to doubt its own shape. Aerin gathered his nets, heavier than expected, and felt both relief and unease. A good catch often demanded a price. The storm came without ceremony. Clouds rolled in like an army that had learned how to march silently. Wind snapped the sail. Waves slapped the boat hard enough to sting, and rain fell sideways, sharp and cold. Aerin worked without panic, his movements steady, practiced the way old men move when they know fear wastes time. Still, the sea had grown angry, and age, for all its wisdom, does not make a man stronger than a storm. A wave struck the boat broadside, cracking one of the ribs. Water rushed in, eager and loud. Aerin bailed with one hand, steered with the other, and laughed once a short, breathless sound that the stubbornness of it all. 1,000 years ago, or today, a fisherman arguing with a sea looks the same. When the boat finally broke, it did so quietly, as if embarrassed. Aerin was thrown into the water, cold, biting through his clothes, his breath torn from him. He clung to a floating plank, the storm roaring above like a crowd that had lost interest in mercy. Time stretched strangely then. He thought of his wife, of the mornings, of the nets drying in the sun. He thought, briefly, that this was how stories ended. But stories, like seas, sometimes change their minds. The storm passed by evening, leaving behind a wounded silence. Aerin drifted until the stars appeared, faint and unsure, and the moon rose like a tired guardian. Sometime before dawn, waves carried him onto a narrow strip of shore, a place he did not know, where the sand was coarse and the rocks dark with moss. He woke, coughing, alive, older somehow than the day before. His body ached, his hands shook, but his heart still beat with that stubborn fisherman's rhythm. He spent days there, living on shellfish and rainwater, mending himself the way he had always mended nets, slowly, carefully, with patience, learned the hard way. Eventually, a passing boat found him. The sailors stared as if he were a ghost pulled from an old song. He did not argue. He let them take him home. Back in his village, people listened as he spoke of the storm, the broken boat, the long night. Some nodded, some crossed themselves, some exaggerated the tale before he even finished telling it. That, too, has never changed. Aerin never went that far out again. He fished closer to shore, taught younger men how to read the wind, how to listen when the sea went quiet in the wrong way. He lived many more years, grew thinner, laughed more softly, and died one winter with his hands folded, smelling faintly of salt. 1,000 years later, his name is gone, his village dust, his boat nothing but memory. But somewhere, in the habits of fishermen who still touch a charm before dawn, who still watch the horizon with respectful suspicion, his story remains. The sea remembers its people, even when the world forgets their names. That, if you ask an old soul, is history done properly. Thank you for listening.